اللهم علمنا ما ينفعنا وانفعنا بما تعلمنا وزدنا بفضلك علما وتعليما إنك على كل شيء قدير. So we had a long discussion last week. Inshallah, that was eye-opening. We're just going to continue, and it says, and righteous women are devoutly obedient, and when alone, i.e., when the husbands are not home, protective of what Allah has entrusted them with, meaning their husband's property and themselves. And if you sense ill conduct from your women, then first advise them. So, what does ill conduct mean? So again, it's very important to understand that we talk about these things on two levels. Okay, we talk about these things on two levels. On a moral level, meaning is what I'm doing halal or haram? Is it pleasing to Allah or not pleasing to Allah? Which is obviously the level that counts. And the other level is the legal level, meaning I'm in a contract, right? I'm in a contract. The Even for the Hanafis, right? So the Hanafis who said, who can remind us, what did the Hanafis say about obedience? What did they say? Can anybody remind us? Sister Husna, Sister Navia, Sister Ma'ab, Sister Fahmiya. Just sisters today, subhanAllah. In everything that's halal, and that is not a something and not something else. There's no harm in it, and there's no doesn't take away something. Her rights. Okay, so for example, he commands her to spend her money on things. Right, she can't do that. Or he has, let's say, for example, he has multiple wives, and he commands one of them, say, you have to give up your turn to so and so. She's not obliged to do that. Of course not. Right. Okay. So now, what you will find then, the Hanafis then, they will distinguish between, and the Shafis as well, the same thing. They distinguish between what's called qada'an and diyanatan. When you say, I have to do X or Y and Z, do you mean in terms of the court, or do you mean in terms of ethics? Okay, we mentioned last week that, for example, for the Shafi'is, you could, for example, you could be rude to your husband, right? What do they mean by you could be rude to your husband? Meaning, if you are normally really rude to him, like basically ever since you got married, it's like you just insult him nonstop, right? That's just how you are. You have very bad akhlaq and whatever. Then legally, you have not become what's called a woman of ill conduct, right? You're not in this category because that's just how you are, okay? As opposed to on this day, for example, you became like this, and you through your language or through your attitude, it became impossible for him to sleep with this woman because you just can't. So that's just so, and that's something that's off. Now we consider that ill conduct. So what am I trying to say is we talk about this thing on two levels. A, on the level of morality. B, on the level of have you vitiated your side of the contract? Have you not fulfilled your side of the contract? Meaning, do you no longer deserve nafaqah? Do you no longer deserve to get to be provided for? Okay, so in fiqh, this is what we talk about. In fiqh, we talk about you're the judge. This woman left the house 2 years ago, then was divorced last week, and now she's asking for her financial support for the last 2 years. Do you have to force him to pay it or not? That's the question. We're not talking about is it moral or not. Okay? We're talking about the court case. Okay, does that make sense? Is everyone's following? Yeah, it's morally unacceptable, but legally okay most of the time, right? So the court is usually is not is it's going to be very difficult for you to prove in the court, say, oh, I wasn't able to do this, I wasn't able to do that because of my wife. It's a bit of a case to prove, right? Um, and I'll just give you like another example of this kind of this situation. Part of that, so one thing is again refusing intimacy or making intimacy practically impossible. That's one thing. Then there's other thing like just leaving the house, right? So he went to work, and then she came back. She had gone, and now 2 years later she's saying I want my money for the last 2 years. He said, hang on a minute, she left the house 2 years ago. She hasn't even been home, right? So here, again, legal issue. So he says, do not leave the house. I'm telling you, do not leave the house. She's like, to hell with you, I'm going. Okay? So obviously that's haram, A, and then B, obviously she's not keeping to her side of the bargain. Okay? But notice again legally, this is an interesting thing. I was reading in last week when we were looking up some of these issues. In Maliki fiqh, they say, well, what if you could get her back in the house? Right? So she walked out, like, so you're there, like, could you just like just physically pick her up and put her back in the house? I said, yeah. So in which case we're going to say it's your fault, like you could have physically actually put her back in the house, right? So it's not like she like left. It was in a way that, for example, you weren't there, it wasn't possible, whatever it was, right? So can you see the situation where um, it's kind of like we're talking about very legally. Like you could physically put her back in the house, right? Like and lock the door, but you didn't. So that's your fault. Like you can't say she can't say so that's not considered her not that's considered your fault because you're not like maintaining it situation, which is kind of interesting if you think about it, right? Again, the kind of level that we're talking about. So anyway, what it means then is on a legal level, she leaves the house. On a legal level, she's not intimate. On a legal level, she doesn't obey. He said, hey, make me a cup of tea. She didn't do it. No one's going to care about that. Maliki and non-Maliki alike, right? Hanafi and non-Hanafi alike, because that's a moral issue, right? It's a moral issue. So again, in the court, they're basically interested in two things. Did you stay in the house? B, were you available for intimacy? Okay? So forgive me, we keep talking about this thing again and again and again, and it sounds like almost like silly or almost an obsession, but it's not. It's like the fact that the fuqaha are talking about one particular thing, like you are available for this particular thing. It's just indicative of what the marriage is about. And so when people who are like, yeah, I'm cordial, I serve this, I serve that, but that kind of thing, no, that's just not, I'm not, uh, you know. I'm not I can't just deliver that kind of thing. There's a serious problem, right? There's a serious problem. At the same time, of course, we have to understand that things are not, that we have to be above the law, meaning we have to be above, we have to go over and above and forgive things. That's another issue. But just on a legal reason, right? And it is important to understand, right? Um, I just give you an example with myself, okay? Um, my landlord, he's a nice guy. He's quite a cool guy. Okay. Do the rules of the rental contract matter? Given that he's a nice guy and I'm a nice guy and I like him, he likes me. Do they matter? They do, right? Because when push comes to shove, right? When push comes to shove, it is actually important. So you cannot come along and say, Habibi, the Islamic marriage is much higher than the rules. No, there's two things. Okay, there's two things. There's this basic line where these rules need to be in place, okay? And then we'll build on that. Inshallah, none of this will ever happen. We're not going to go to court. She's not going to run away. He's not going to not provide for her. This. Inshallah, it's all great, right? If they have a problem, they'll sort it out in a nice way. If one of them wrongs the other person, they'll forgive each other. Inshallah, right? Inshallah. But that's not always the case. right? That's not always the case. People are not always cordial. People don't, people aren't careful. People aren't this, people. So we do actually have to have this basic line, right? We spoke about last week about the dual income household. Sister, we live in this is modern day London. How am I supposed to pay the rent? Right? We need to team up. Da, 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 da. That's fantastic. 5 years in, forget this. I'm not doing it anymore. Not interested. I am not paying a single penny. This is my money. You have to pay for the bills. You have to pay for the rent. You have to pay for these things. Don't ask me for anything that's not obligatory. I'm not doing it. You can't force me to do it. Leave me alone. Right? Can you see? People are in those situations. And that is important to know. When does the level of ihsan stop and we have to go back to something, right? You following me? You have to go back to something. What is that basic line that we're going to have to go back to? Okay? So is that everyone's following so far?
Yes.
Okay, great. So when we say ill conduct here, we're going to mean you left the house, right? And I just want to give an example, right? Obviously, we've got people, there's, marriage and culture. Marriage means different things in different cultures, okay? But the concept of leaving the house. Um, there was a Sahabi, okay, that died, okay? And the story that he died was the following. He comes home, okay? He comes home, and his wife is about to leave the house. Do you know what he does? He's about to see his wife leave the house. No, he doesn't divorce her. He immediately takes his spear out, like he's about to kill her. It's like, oh my God, that's insane, right? And so the Prophet so it's like, whoa. And she's like, hang on a minute, because she's leaving. Like, don't even leave the house, right? And she says, hang on a minute, before you don't kill me, there's a reason why I'm leaving the house. He says, what is it? There's this huge snake in the house. She's like, oh my God. He goes into this house and then he kills the snake. And then the snake is on the end of his spear. And then the snake, while it's dying, bites him, right? And then they mentioned to the Prophet, and we weren't sure who died first. And then the Prophet said, listen, there are jinn in the houses. Some of these house snakes are actually jinn. So when you see them, warn them 3 times. And then after that, kill them. So, but the point is, can you see there's a culture there, right? I've mentioned this many times. You have to take this culture from the Quran and the things like you come in and it's one thing that you have a relationship with your spouse that's like, yeah, I mean, you can leave the house, right? I mean, I went to work before you, like it's cool, right? But can you see like there is this backdrop which is like, no, you can't leave the house, right? Like that's not insane, right? That's not insane. Yes, it's a culture, it's a rural, tribal culture, etc., fine. But that is a backdrop for us to look at. You know what I'm saying? Like that shouldn't be too strange for us. That should be like, oh yeah, I can kind of see that, right? Is it halal to do that? You can't obviously kill your wife if she leaves the house, right? But his attitude is indicative of something that is very foreign to us, right? His attitude is indicative of something that is, or it shows something that's very different to us, and maybe we can be closer to that. Does that make sense? Maybe we can be closer to that a little bit. So anyway, she leaves the house without permission. He said, "You do not leave the house. I'm not joking." She leaves the house without permission. She's not available. She does not make herself available physically, right? So now what happens? It says this is now ill conduct, right? Um, First, advise them, okay? So here's the question: فَعِظُوهُنَّ, give advice. Who, and this is important to us, regardless of do we live in a house where we can't leave the house without our husband telling us some of that, regardless, is who can tell who off? It's a real question and a very immediately felt question. Who can tell who off in the husband-wife relationship, right? So we live in a world where this East and the West in reality is kind of the same, where women do tell their husbands off, right? Like that we do live in a world where it's like women do tell their husbands off. Like, I told you not to talk to her. Why are you talking to her? Why are you talking to her? Right? Oh my God, why did you spend that money? I told you not to spend that money. Why did you do it? What's your problem? Right? So obviously, there's an element to which the closer you are to somebody, the more vocal you're going to be, right? Like if you're really distant, it'd be like, yeah, I guess I don't really know this guy. Who cares? I guess I'm just legally married to him, so I'm not really gonna, you know, I don't feel close enough to object, of course. But there's still, whatever stage of marriage you are, how close you are, right? There's a hierarchy. Who can tell who off, right? So you can ask your husband to do something, but you can't tell your husband to do something. You can tell your wife to do something, right? You can advise your husband like, you're being really cruel to me. I'm sorry. Like the language is really really hurtful. Like, do you not think Allah's going to punish you, right? But that's like advising me, right? Like us has talking to me, and he's like, Sheikh Farid, do you mind if I talk to you privately? I'm like, yeah, sure. What is it? And us has like, Farid, I noticed you did A, B, and C. This is actually haram. Do you know that? Right? And Sheikh Farid, like, you're my teacher. I respect you, but this is haram. So see the way he's going to talk to me. It's a student teacher relationship. Whatever he tells me, he's going to maintain a certain level of respect because he can tell me, in fact, his my haqq on him that he commands me to do what is right and he forbids me from the wrong. He sees me smoking, the videos, the audios accidentally on, he hears me swearing at my kids, and he's like, Sheikh, do you mind speaking to right? Can you see the difference though? Right? So what does that mean then? To some extent, not in every way, but to some extent, the relationship between the husband and the wife is a bit like the relationship between the parent and the child. So you can tell your children, go to your room. The child cannot tell tell the mum, the dad, go to your room, right? You can't tell your parents, go to your room, right? You could ask your dad, Dad, would you mind picking me up? I broke my foot. Like, would you mind picking me up from work because I can't actually come back? And he's like, yeah, sure. So you can ask your dad to pick you up from work. You can't tell your dad to pick you up from work, right? So this is a like, you could imagine doing a whole workshop on this, a whole workshop where you have a talk, and we do scenarios, and then, you know, husband and wife, let's talk about this, right? Because a lot of husbands will be like, yeah, this lady is super bossy. This lady talks to me. She talks to me as if she's my equal, right? She talks to me, or the fact that she's above me, basically. Like she is my new mum, right? And how do you think men feel when they have a new mum in their life and that they're married to? Do they feel good about it? Is it nice? Do you think men feel attracted to a woman who is like talking to them like, is it like their mum? Like it makes them feel like, oh yeah, I'm 15 again, and my mum's telling me off for not washing my teeth or for not doing my homework. So there's about four sisters here. What do you think, guys? Sister Husna and Sister Hanara, Sister Nadia, Zaid. I know Zaid, you're not a sister. As a who here are parents? Who's her parents here? So us, how do you have kids?
Yeah, sure.
Sister Fahmiya, you have kids? Sister Husna, Sister Jahana, of course you have kids. Yeah. Zaid, you have kids? Of course, we all, Sister Jahanara, none of us are perfect, right? We're not talking about do we actually keep to it. What we're trying to talk about is do we know what is right? You know? So we spoke about last week. There's no men anymore, there's no women anymore. We've already understood that. So nobody's making a claim that, oh, men and women are like this, but and men are like this. What we're trying to say is men should be like this, women should be like this, and at least we can both agree to go in that direction, right? Inshallah, Zaid soon, inshallah. Okay, good point, Husna, inshallah. I'll come to that in a second. Okay, now, but Sister Husna, do you have kids? Oh, okay, inshallah, soon, inshallah. Anyhow, okay, who has been in a situation where they've told their kid, Habibi, you're not, you are not a parent. You're not my husband. You're not my wife. You're my kid. I am telling you this, right? And the kid is talking to them as if they're on the same level. Like you're like, oh my God, who is this kid? They're like, I am not doing that, and we're doing this. And you're like, oh my God, who is this kid? Who's been in that situation? Okay, or at least people who don't have kids. You've observed it. Thank you, Hasna. Right? Exactly. Exactly. Like, subhanallah. Right? So so we now experience that relationship shift, right? So as a parent, again, this goes back to Husna's issue, right? So Husna says, well, again, as a husband, so does that mean I could tell my wife like this, continually telling my wife off, right? Continuing telling to do stuff, do this, do this, do this, do this. Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Why'd you do this? Why'd you? Of course not, right? But it's a relationship, okay? But it's a bit like a parent of a teenager, okay? A parent of a teenager. If you are telling your teenager non-stop, do your homework, don't be late, don't do this, don't do this, it's just going to go in one ear, out the ear, I don't really care. But there is a point, right? There is a point where you are 18 and you do not pay the bills, and I'm your dad. Don't talk to me like that. Don't give me attitude. I'm telling you, you want to stay in the house? Be home by 10 o'clock. Do your homework. Don't play loud things. Don't do this. Don't do this. Don't do this. There are rules. Keep to them or leave. I'm the parent. You're not paying the bills. I'm big and you're small, and there's nothing you can do about it. Right? And they might be frustrated and they might be like this, but there's an actual relationship. And when they're older, like, oh my God, I was an idiot when I spoke to my dad like that, right? They don't realize what's going on until they become parents, and they're like, oh yeah, subhanAllah, I was so rude to my mom, I was so rude to my dad, I had no idea, right? Is everyone following? So I'm not trying to say that men should be continually telling women what to do, and women should be continually saying yes, 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 and then men should be telling their wife. I'm not just trying to say that, but I'm saying there is actual relationship, right? There is actual relationship. So now, if you look, compare this to compare this to films, things that we watch on TV, right? Um, there's it's like non-stop. It's actually flipped, right? Because basically women were so oppressed in the West, and because the men were like your whole basically reacting to multiple things, including the 1950s wife, etc. We're the opposite. Like it's funny in a film if like the wife tells the husband off, right? Like that's not a problem. That's not considered like bad, right? So again, I remember with my kids watching Ninjago, okay, and there was a whole season that started with this scene where the Sensei Wu, Sensei Wu is like 100 years old or whatever, okay, so he's a sensei, and his wife, I can't remember what her name was, um, is telling him off, right? And he's like really down, and he's like, I'm not really fighting anymore, and my students are kind of like they can do things by themselves, and and then they get this invitation to go to some place, and he's like, no, I don't want to go. So he doesn't want to go. And then his wife tells him off, like, you're going to go and you're going to like it. And that's it. Like, so there's this attitude, right? Which is kind of like funny, where he's just kind of being put in his place and that's it. You know what I'm saying? And that's kind of okay and acceptable and funny. It's not. It's not. So again, this is the same situation that we spoke about last week, right? Same situation we spoke about last week, that you, as a woman, you're conditioned to condition your husband into a place where you don't want to be and he doesn't want to be. Like you don't want to be in that situation. Nobody wants to mother their husband ever. That's this like the most revolting thing in the world. Like I have to tell my husband to go to work. Like I don't ever want to be in that situation ever. I have to go and tell him, "Hey, did you check I don't know, did you apply for another job?" He said, "No, I haven't." And like, "Well, should we do that together?" Says, "Yeah." And like, oh my God, I don't want to be in that situation. Correct, sisters, right? Am I right or wrong? Right? You never want to be in that situation where it's like, um, you know, we see that unfortunately, right? So you never want to be in that situation, okay? Similarly, as a husband, you never want to be in a situation, as a man, you never want to be in a situation where there's this woman in your life who's going to keep telling you off. It's like, again, you're married to your mother. It's like, I didn't want to marry my mother. Thank you very much. Right? Okay. So therefore, we should avoid that situation. Right? It's not a good situation. Right? Now, I want to contrast this with slightly, sometimes with your parents, you do have to get into that situation. Right? As your parents get older, there's this awkward situation where they do become a bit more childlike, right? With parents who get older, they can become a bit more childlike. For example, the issues with like making decisions, it gets harder. Their capabilities are less. Their trust in themselves is less. And so, but we have to do it respectfully, though, right? So imagine, you're talking to your dad, and he's like, do you want to fly or not? And he's like, we'll see. I'm like, Dad, I don't mean to be disrespectful, but if you want to fly, we need to buy the tickets now, right? So so that can happen with your husband on some levels, right? Where there's something, but it's still you still keep respect. Okay? Still keep respect. So what I'm trying to say then is on multiple levels, we shouldn't get into that level, right? But just for the sake of a woman, it's like you tell myself, I cannot tell my husband to do something. I cannot tell my husband off. That is not A, adab, B, that is not adab, it's very disrespectful, right? A. And B, it puts me in a revolting situation where I'm married to a child. I don't want to be married to a child, right? So what should you do then as a woman? Let the guy fall on his face. Doesn't want to pay the bills? That's his problem. Has financial issues? Do that. It's better to do that. It's way better to do that, sisters, by the way. Right? It's way better to do that. Just leave him. Because nobody wants to be led. Nobody wants to be like men can't do that. It's just that it's not so much as a nafs issue. It's an issue of like a by nature that you just can't do that. It's better to just fall on your face. Like let him lose his job, leave his job. Like you keep having to wake him up to go to work, and it's like subhanallah, right? Like oh he was playing computer games last night till 2 a.m. and then he's sleeping and it's like let him lose his job. It's actually better for a man to lose his job and have to deal with the pain of finances and reality than to be told by his second mother. It's like it's just weird. And you're actually creating a situation which is very ugly and weird, right? And horrible on multiple levels. That's number one. Number two is which is worse, telling your parents off or telling your husband off? Which is worse? Advising is
Parents
totally different. Go ahead, go ahead, Asad.
telling of the parents is worse.
That is not true. That is not true. So Azhar is somebody who is well raised, who is religious, and he grows up in a religious environment where disrespect to parents is not acceptable. Okay, that's correct, Azhar, right? Like you like I could bet there's a level of respect in your family and extended family for parents that is not in my extended family because we're not from an ethnic Muslim country, ethnic background. Is that correct, Azhar, right? So you come from there's respect for elders. That's like right? Is that correct, Azhar?
True.
Right? But the fact that he answered that the respect for the parents is greater than the husband is a problem. Does that make sense? Because it's not true. What did the Prophet ﷺ say about sujud?
And to the husbands. Yeah.
Mhm. Exactly. Everybody, most ethnic women, right? If I'm going to respect anybody, it's going to be my parents. I'm sorry, like I live with you. You're not that amazing, right? That's the whole problem with the what's the whole difficulty with respecting your husband? Like I live with the guy, you know? He's not that amazing. But in reality, that's not true. The Prophet ﷺ said, if I was to command anybody, right? So what happened is some of the Sahaba were trying to do sujood to the Prophet ﷺ. And the Prophet was like, no, don't do that. I said, no, but we saw that, the non-Muslims, that's how they revere, that's how they show respect to their rulers and things like that. And the Prophet said, no, don't do sujood to anybody. If I told anybody to do sujood to anybody, it would be a woman to her husband. Right? He didn't say if it would be anybody to everybody, it would be, for example, a child to the parents. No. So that tells us the respect due to your husband is more than your parents, right? Is more than your parents. So what does that mean then? You're getting married or you are married, you'd be like, sister, and forgive me, I'm always talking to sisters. I have a lot of things to say to husbands, to men. In fact, men should just, if Sayyidina Umar was alive today, he'd just have all men lined up and just slapped a few times, right? Because men are dropping the ball on a huge level. And so, but at least sisters, again, if you saw what I wrote last week, there's a you're in a position, sisters, where you can actually save things, you can start saving things, right? You can start saving things, right? And you can start saving things on a micro level. Like it changes today, right? Like the way you speak to your husband. The way you speak to your husband can open certain doors, right? It can open certain doors. So anyway, is you ask yourself, I just had an argument with my husband. Okay, we all do. You had an argument with your wife. We all do, right? The question is, I asked the sister, if this person was your granddad, would you speak to him like that? Like, would you speak to your granddad? Would you be happy that on TV we videoed you talking to your granddad like that, and then Judgment Day, you know, because you say, why were you speaking like that? Well, I was about issues of justice, about issues of morality, da, da, da. So I don't have a problem with you getting emotional about justice and things like that. But there's a point where you're crossing the line on a egregiously, like it's really, really bad. Like that is not how you would speak to your parents, or that is not how you speak to your granddad, right? Let alone your husband, right? Notice the phrase, let alone your husband. Like that's not how you speak to your husband at all. Zero. That's not respectful, right? And then the opposite is, brother, you're talking to you're talking to this lady. You're on camera, by the way. So is that how you would speak to? Is that a nice way of speaking to somebody? Right? Is that a nice way of speaking? Is that so? You're advising her. You're saying, sister, this. Are you now attacking her, or are you now advising her? Right? Is that nice, or is that not nice? Are you getting angry because she offended you, or is she getting angry because she's doing something haram? There's a big difference, right? Right? And then for women, I understand there's a certain point where it's just you're not in control, right? For men, it happens now and then, but for women, there's a certain point where you're not in control. Okay, may Allah forgive us all. But for men, it's like, was that even useful? So when you gave that advice to your wife, was that useful, right? So there's many caveats we'd say with Libby, many criterion we put there for men. It's like, what you just said to her, was that even useful? Not even useful, right? So half of the times, like, forget about it. But for a woman, I'm coming from a world where it's like I'm on the same level as my husband, therefore I can tell him off. No, you cannot tell your husband off. You can never tell your husband off. You can advise him. You sit down with him and say, we're both slaves of Allah. There is such thing as a Sharia. There's halal and haram. We're familiar with this, right? What you just said is haram. We cannot use words like that. I'm telling you as your little sister in Islam. Your little sister in Islam. I'm talking to you as if I was your little sister, and I'm advising you. I'm not telling you to do this, and I'm not telling you can't do this. I'm not here to tell you what to do or what not to do. That's not my role. However, we need to fear Allah, right? That's fine. That's fine. But we have to understand the angle. So whenever it sounds like mum talking to son, you just for you as a woman, you're creating the wrong relationship, and for you as a wife, you're creating the wrong relationship, and it's horrible and just like disgusting, right? And unfortunately, relationships continue like that, right? Like 20, 30 years, it's just like that. And it's just a horrible relationship and nobody's happy, right? Let him, Husna. So your husband, for some random reason, has said that we're moving to Las Vegas. So you sit down with him, you say, Habibi, let's talk about this, okay? We live in a beautiful place where there's a masjid, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. There's an Islamic school that we can afford, alhamdulillah rabbil alameen. And you want us to move to Las Vegas and take the kids to a Catholic school. Is that what you're saying? He's saying, yes. Okay, Habibi, can we talk about this? You know, we are both responsible before Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala on Judgment Day. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Says, yeah, we're moving to Las Vegas and we're going to send the kids to a Catholic school. Okay, wait a bit. Try and advise him again. Try and advise him again. But am I in a situation where I'm saying, I am telling you now, we are not doing this. Sorry, we are not doing this. Can I ever say that as a wife? We are not moving over my dead body. You can't do that. Because he's the shepherd. You're not the shepherd. You're not in that situation. That's this fundamental thing. It's like he's the guy. So I'm saying let him ruin it. But that's his job. You can't come along and say, I veto. You're not in a position to veto anything. You can't come along and do that. You can advise, and that's all. Right? Does that make sense? Yeah, but that's why you marry the right person, Husna. Does that make sense? So, but like, this is a joke. You made a decision, financial decision, we're all being harmed from. You made a decision, which is I'm now in a situation I don't want to be here. There's no sisters here. There's no masjid. There's no this. There's no that. The kids. Da 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 da. Da. That's it's his ship. That's the thing. You got onto his ship, and he is the captain. That's the whole point. Does that make sense? That's the whole thing. Men are caretakers. Like he is the captain of the ship. So that's why we're going to be very picky who you marry, right? And go through situations like this. How do you process it? Give me examples, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And if you don't feel comfortable marrying this guy, don't marry this guy. And that's why last week we mentioned about why would your father be involved? He's also going to scrutinize him. Who's this guy? It's very important. Very, very important. So you're marrying somebody who does not the way that he processes things is off. Well, does that make sense, Sister Husna? But it's important. It's like it's like Trump right now. Okay, this is all going on YouTube anyway, right? So does it work in politics that we vote for somebody, okay, and then when we don't like what he does, we do a rebellion? Can we do that? Like we just like that's it. We're not going to listen to him. It doesn't work like that. If you don't like him, next, don't vote for him next. But you can't do a rebellion. That's not how politics works. And so marriage is a small state. You agreed on a ruler, okay? And now you need to follow this imperfect ruler, right? Yeah, but there's ways you can find these things out, Sister Husna. Right? There's ways you can work these things out. There's certain things you can what if this, what if this, what if this, what if this? So if you lost your job, what would happen here? You see other things, right? But the point is you should be careful who you marry. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, listen to this. The Prophet ﷺ, he said, marriage is like a form of slavery, right? It's a form of slavery. So be very, very careful who you marry your daughter to. Because this person is going to be the master of your daughter, the master of the family. He's going to be in charge, right? So what he can't do is tell everybody to walk off the cliff, right? Okay, family were walking off the cliff and they literally all died. You can't do that. You don't listen to, if it's obviously haram. But here's situations where like, I don't understand my husband. We were living in Medina, next to the haram. The kids were in Islamic school. They heard the adhan and he's decided to move to some random place because it's good for their education. And I'm like, oh my God, this is the most ridiculous thing he's ever decided to do in his life. Or he just sold the house. Why did you sell the house? They just told us that in 10 years it's going to double in price. Why did you do that? Why did you do that? Right? So it's very important that you have to understand that there's somebody in charge and you have to listen to them. And you can't just do whatever you want. That's part of the structure of marriage. You can't just do whatever you want, right? The imam is leading the prayer. Can't just do whatever you want. Every single thing has a there's every single the policeman tells you, right? What if the policeman stopped? Like I got stopped, Sister Hosna, okay? I got stopped in a place where it changed, right outside our mosque. It changed from 45 to 35, okay? So I'm driving at 40 miles an hour on a 35-mile-an-hour road, okay? And people go on 50 that mile all the time. I got stopped by the police. He is my imam. The policeman stops me, right? Let's make him Muslim. Let's say I was in Saudi Arabia, okay? The Muslim policeman stops me and says, it's 35, you're going 40. I'm like, Habibi, there's no difference between 35 and 40. Nobody ever stops somebody for 35 to 40. It's not a thing you stop people for. But we all benefit from authority because otherwise, if it was all I can do whatever I want, it's not going to work, right? So your question is a really important question, Sister Husna, really important, right? But it's like, how should we do things? Should we be a democratic marriage or should we be a monarchic marriage? The answer from Allah is monarchic marriage. There's a monarch. You have a king. He's called your husband, right? And now there's limits to what he can do. He cannot tell you to do the haram, okay? And he can't harm people. But he can do things that you may judge as like ridiculous, silly, pompous, this, right? Um, he's hardly paying the bills and he decided to get a second wife. You're like, okay, mashallah, applaud, right? The guy's just like, what? Like, where is this guy? So he can do whatever. That's his thing. Now, for your point of, that's why again it comes down to the okay, we're not playing ihsan anymore. Now we're playing rules. What are my rights as a wife? Are you providing for me? Yes. Okay. You're not providing for me. 3 days later, I'm going to go to the court and say he didn't pay the rent. I had to stay at my brother's house. Um, he's not provide. There's no food, and I'm going to go. And now I can bring in somebody above my husband, which is the court. uh, Physical abuse, bringing somebody above my husband, etc. But it doesn't work that you can just veto him or tell him off or stop him. You can't do that. Does that make sense? It has to get to a point where he's 100% crossed the line, and now you're going to take the issue to the level of the court and say this is obvious harm now. Even with the issue of he's continuing criticizing me every single day. I get 5 khutbahs, right? In the morning, I get a khutbah about the sunnahs of making breakfast for my husband and why I should make tawbah for my bad behavior yesterday. And it's like 5 khutbahs a day. I can't deal with 5 khutbahs a day. I'm going to go to the court and say I'm being emotionally abused, and I don't want some guy who's going to give me a religious spiel every 2 minutes about how bad a woman I am and how I should fear Allah, because this is ridiculous. Okay, so can I take that match into my own hands and leave? No. You take it to the court and you say, I am being emotionally abused by my husband. You are higher than my husband. You have an authority over him. I want you, the court, to divorce me. Does that make sense? But there's a structure, and that structure is very important. Okay? And sisters who are married, would you agree that that structure is pretty important sometimes? Would you like it if the ball was in your court 100, that you could make decisions, independent decisions all the time, such as ending the marriage, such as would you agree with me? So I think you've talked to any sister who's been married for like 5, 10 years, you'd be like, Alhamdulillah, I'm not in charge. Because I would have done certain things at certain times where yeah, that was the wrong thing to do. You know? That was the wrong thing to do. Okay? So I'm not trying to say men are perfect, but I'm trying to say there is a structure, there is somebody in charge, this person deserves respect, right? And and you cannot talk to them as you would to your peer. He's not your peer. He is your superior, right? So the default is there should be jokes, there should be everyone's chill, etc., etc. But there is a line you shouldn't cross. Yeah, but Sister Fahmiya, it's also wrong to imagine that there was a utopian world. Okay, it's also important to understand that, right? In the army, okay, let's look at the army. People who are trying to successfully win wars. Is it a democracy or is there somebody who's in charge? Like in the army, like here we're trying to get these 20 men from A to B alive, or they're trying to take this fort. Someone's in charge. That's how the world functions. It does not mean that the person who's in charge knows what he's doing, but it is a better system. It is a better of the two evils. So even in the time of the Prophet sallallahu alaihi wasallam, you're going to have some idiot who divorced his wife for some stupid reason. You're going to have somebody who made a plan, says, "That's it. My wife said she said take the camels to the east. I'm going to go to the west just to show her." And then they all died. And they're like, "Oh my God, this is ridiculous." But that's a better system than let's sit here and discuss it, right? And so it's a bit analogous to let's sit down and discuss, like let's take an extreme scenario. Let's sit down and ask the kids, my kids in my family, which gender would you like? Or whether we should go to school or not, right? Or should we eat candy for dinner or should we eat pasta, right? So I'm not going to sit and discuss with my kids, right? We're not going to do that. There is actually a hierarchy. Okay, so what should happen is there should be mushawara. The Prophet ﷺ, again, listen to my fiqh class, the Prophet ﷺ is going to his wives like, what do I do? Right? There should be people, there should be teamwork. We should be talking about things. Maybe she has insights that you don't have. Maybe she has strength you don't have. But at the end of the day, it's on his shoulders that he chooses, and it's in on his shoulders. Let him fall. Just like with your son. My son decided to study marine biology at school. He should have done medicine. It's like, let him fall. You cannot baby your son. Don't do that. That's very bad. Let your son fall on his face. He needs to fall on his face. If it takes him 10 years to become a man, let him, right? Maybe your husband will take 10 years to become a man. Let him. And inshallah, he'll be a good husband in 10 years for you or for somebody else, inshallah. But you can't baby people. It doesn't work, and it's not it's counterproductive. It's not a it doesn't work at all. Okay, it doesn't work at all. So, Sister Hosna, am I making sense? Okay, okay. So anyway, um, so who tells who? I do as a wife. I do not tell my husband. I ask my husband. Right? You can't tell your husband off. You can advise him. Okay. If they persist, she keeps leaving the house. He comes home. Where is this lady? Right. Then do not share their beds. Okay. So now emotional punishment. So now who has the right to do this? This is again very relevant. Right. What does it mean? Oh, Ahmed, sleeping in the doghouse again. What does that mean? What does that mean when I tell my friend, oh man, sleeping in the doghouse again? What does that mean?
And being under rule of the wife.
What it means, a different room. Basically, my wife kicked me out of the room, right? She's like, I don't, please sleep somewhere else. Okay. So can you tell your husband to sleep somewhere else?
No.
You know what I'm saying? Probably not. I was about to say none of this is answered, and then we got half an answer. Definitely not. You can't do that. Okay? So what you can do is ask him. You can say, please, it's very, very, very difficult for me to talk to you right now, and it's very, very difficult to me to be in the same room as you right now. I am asking you, as your wife, to please do not talk to me for the next 48 hours because what you said was very, very painful. And I'm asking you, please don't be in the same room as me. I'm asking you. I'm not telling you. I don't say, don't you dare talk to me ever again. Or don't you dare even be in the same. You can't say that. You can't do that. Can you say that to your parents? Like we, all of us, every single one of us, our parents have done something which was really wrong and painful at some point. Like, I can't believe you just said that. Like a super insignificant, like rude or horrible, whatever. And your parents step out of line. We're not saying they're God. We're not saying they're prophets. Parents step out of line. But how do we interact with them? You can't do that, right? So you don't tell your dad, don't you dare talk to me like that ever again, dad. You can't speak to him like that. You can cry. You can be upset. You can ask your parents like, "Oh my God, that's so cruel. Like, I can't believe you just said that. I'm so hurt by that." Right? Please don't speak to me like that. Right? But you can't tell them, "Don't you dare talk to me like that ever again." Right? Who do you think you are? You can't talk to you. So, and if you do, okay, may Allah forgive us, you step out of line with your parents. At least you know that you stepped out of line, okay? Like, at least you're like, I'm cognizant of the fact that that's wrong. So there's a big difference between a woman who says, "Get out of the room now. Don't even talk to me ever again." That's it. Okay, and then she realizes the next day, okay, that was haram. I can't do that. I'm sorry, right? But let's talk about it properly. There's a big difference between a woman who knows that that's wrong versus a woman who's like, "Yeah, I can do that." Right? What's the phrase there? Uh, what is it? Um, like, oh, don't be too nice to him because otherwise he'll like, he'll start to feel like secure, right? It's like you can't do that, right? So, and then furthermore, what's wrong with telling your husband get out of the room? Right? Zayd left. That's it. He's had. So here's a question: If your husband is rude to you, does that take his rights away from him? Does that take his rights away from him? It doesn't, right? So that's why you're like in a situation where, subhanAllah, he still has physical rights to you. He has a right to be in the bedroom with you for crying out loud, right? So now you're saying, I'm not going to give you that, A, and you can't even be in the room, B, and what I'm doing is right. Can you see that? There's a big difference between I did something wrong or I'm doing something wrong. I can't control myself. These are just emotions pouring out. These are these words. And what I'm doing is right. Okay? So it's like somebody who's like, today I'm not praying because I'm just like stressed. And what I'm doing is right. That's like kufr, right? Like I don't have to pray because I'm upset. Sister or brother, you're not praying today because you're upset. Okay. You're doing the haram, fine. I'm drinking alcohol and it's haram. But I'm not going to come say it's okay, right? So again, there's a whole dynamic that we're seeing in these few verses, a whole dynamic. You're not in a situation to say that. You ask him, say, like, I can't say Habibi. I'm not going to use those words right now because what you just said was very painful. What you just did was very painful. Please, I am asking you, can I please leave the car right now? I will go in an Uber. I find it very difficult to be in the car with you right now. Please, I would like to be somewhere else for the next 2 days. Is that okay? Yes, thank you. That's it. You ask permission, done. As opposed to, I'm leaving. Goodbye. Forget this. I'm out of here, you know? Or you're out of here. Get out of the house now, right? You can't say things like get out of your house to your husband. Get out of the room. You can't, in fact, you can't even use the imperative. You can't say do. You say please do or could you do, right? So just think about this, and then so what does this mean? Again, when I'm talking to sisters, why is it so powerful? You change small things, he changes. He changes, you change. You change, he change. As you mentioned, everything goes on and on, around in circles. The family changes, the ummah changes. So there is a secret in women. Women have a lot of power. And I'm not trying to say it's on their shoulders. I'm not trying to say that. I mentioned that last week. It's not on their shoulders. But change, change the narrative. You can't say do. Say, please do. You can't say pass. You say, please pass. Could you pass? So suddenly he's like, oh, you're really nice in language, in this and this and this and this and this. Changes dynamics. Okay. Where do we get to? So you cannot do that. But if they persist, then discipline them gently. Okay, now we're on to a whole other level, right? So before we were in a situation where, oh yeah, you can tell your husband off. You can tell your husband off, but you can't tell your wife off because that's toxic masculinity, right? You can tell your husband to get out of the room or leave the house because he was horrible to you, right? Furthermore, there is no circumstance where he could ever physically discipline you, ever, right? Like, who do you think I am? Like, you can't physically discipline anybody, let alone your wife, for crying out loud. And so again, this is how far we are away from the mark. And it doesn't actually say, and then gently discipline them. It doesn't say that. Do you know what it says, guys? The actual Arabic, like they've just kind of, I mean, I guess the book couldn't be printed like this. They couldn't change it. What does it say? Like it's a very simple Arabic that any Arab today would know, and a very simple word, one of the first verbs you learn in Arabic. What does it say? It says it hit them, right? So like what? Like that's like really strange. It's strange because we're not a Quranic people. We don't live by the Quran. So we don't live in a so let's say this, let's take this argument, okay? The argument started downstairs and she was like, I don't know who you're this and you're this and you're this and yes, don't you ever do that again and don't you ever do that again. And then they both go upstairs and she's like, you're not going to be in this room. Thank you very much. You're sleeping downstairs. Thank you very much. Right? That was and she's thinking, yeah, and then she's texting her friend, yeah, I had this argument with my husband, like this guy got to put this guy in his line, it's like this guy's like, I don't know what this guy's doing, da da da, I had to like, just give it to him, and like the guy's just like crazy. So she's thinking, she's like justifying what she did, and she thinks it's good, right? She dealt with the situation in a proper way, and she's like, you sister, you tell him, and it's like all off, right? And then he comes down and he's like, he goes upstairs like, no, I am sleeping here. He's like, she's like, no, you're not. And then she starts trying to push off somewhere and like, you can't push me. I can push you, right? You have no right to push me. I have right to push you, right? Even that scenario you mentioned that, said that the woman's leaving the house. They said, well, why didn't you just take her back into the house, right? Today, if the woman was leaving the house and he tried to get her back into the house, she called the cops, right? Like, what are you doing? Get off, get your hands off me. Whereas like that's actually what you signed up for. Like you said, like I'm gonna be present. I'm gonna be here. Here is somebody who is gonna be the captain of the ship, and I understand that he can actually physically discipline me if I step out of line, and that's okay. Now, why do they add the word gently? Because the fuqaha will tell us. So does that mean he can harm her? Say no. Okay, what do you mean? How could you hit but not harm? So well, maybe you're not going to it's not going to be very painful and it's not going to leave any marks. So they say you can't leave any marks. It can't be like that. It can't be something like that. But you could physically pull somebody, like physically take somebody somewhere. Like she's like, what are you doing? Kicking and screaming, like pick somebody up, right? And now for many women, that's like ridiculous. That's just like my husband's like crossed the line, way beyond the line. Why? Because of where we are and how things have changed, right? And it's like, oh, like I have a right to do that, and I'm like, it's my body, my right. Like nobody can force me to do anything. It's not actually the case. It's not actually the case, right? So who can tell who off? Who can tell who to do what? Who can tell who off? Who can tell somebody you're sleeping downstairs or you're not sleeping downstairs? The husband to the wife, not the wife to the husband, right? Who could physically restrain somebody? The husband. Who could physically discipline as you do a child. So again, notice I said, oh, to kind of be like but a bit to some extent, it's a bit like parent-child. That's what you do to your children, right? That's what you do to your children. There's a certain point like, hey, you've just crossed the line way too far, right? And so Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has given that authority. But because we don't read the Quran, because we're not a Quranic generation, all of this is like foreign and we have to talk about it. Nobody had to talk about this in the past. No issue. Nobody. This would, if this was translated 150 years ago, nobody would bat an eyelid. They were like, it's normal. No one's in the West, no one's going to question anything. But we've gone through a whole bunch of things and everything's changed, and it's like, oh, everyone's confused now. Does that make sense? And then Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala says, but if they change their ways, then do not be unjust to them. Surely Allah is high and all great. So be careful, right? And obviously, so the Prophet ﷺ, some of the Sahaba, they came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, like our wives are like totally out of control. So the Prophet ﷺ said, go ahead, you can physically discipline them. It's fine. And then a bunch of women start coming to the Sahabiyat, came to the Prophet ﷺ and complaining this. And the Prophet ﷺ said, a whole group of women have been coming to us complaining. And I'm just going to let you know that they are the wives of the people who are not the best of you, right? So the Prophet ﷺ is confirming two things. Number one, the fact that you got to that stage of physical discipline means you're not a good manager as a husband, and you're probably crossing the line. But at the same time, I still give you that authority. It is better that men have that authority to physically discipline their wives than we take that away because of the possibility of them crossing the line. Just like with a parent, it is possible, and it does happen, that parents abuse children. It's possible, and it does happen. But it's better that parents are in charge of children than the state, right? Than Big Brother, than I don't know, right? So just as we do not take children away from parents, and we don't take the right to physically discipline children away from parents. Similarly, because of the possibility or the actuality of abuse. Similarly, there is more good in empowering men with this responsibility, and I want to even say right, with this responsibility, than taking it away from them. Right? And so all of this verse here, this verse is huge because it's not about bedroom and not bedroom. It is about a relationship. What is your relationship to this thing, right? I'm playing frisbee with somebody, and someone's saying, "What are you playing frisbee with?" Oh, it's a mushaf. So, Sister Ma'ab, how would you react to me if I was playing frisbee with a mushaf? Right? Would you attend my classes? Would you be like, "Oh yeah, this is Sheikh Farid"? You'd be like, "I'm sorry, this guy's a nutcase." Right? But why is it? Because I clearly don't understand my relationship with the mushaf. So if I don't have that relationship with the mushaf, I'm just off. Okay? So that's what it is. I'm not talking about the tajweed and all of these things. I'm talking about the relationship is off. Right? The relationship is just off. Right? How we interact with the Kaaba, how we interact with all these things. So this is very important, right? And in reality, it starts as children, right? If you can't respect your parents, of course you can't respect your husband because you don't know what respect is to begin with, right? So, it's very difficult. But at least we can identify where it's wrong and correct it. At least we can say, yep, it's wrong, right? Azhar, to learn something today, right? Even Azhar, who understands these things better than me because in his culture, he's like, what did I learn today? It's like, and now he's going to teach his daughter, you know how you respect me? Your respect for your husband is greater than me. And she's like, whoa, it's crazy. So think very hard before you get married. Think about it. And when you're married, say, Ya Allah, help me control my emotions and help me as a woman revere my husband as I should. And Ya Allah, not because of who he is, I don't care who he is or what he is, but because Allah, you made him the Kaaba of my life. Right? And the Prophet ﷺ, a woman came to the Prophet ﷺ and said, Ya Rasulullah, I need some advice, one, two, three. And then the Prophet ﷺ said to her, do you have a husband? She said, yeah. how are you with your husband? She said, I honestly try my very best. I honestly try my very best with my husband, 120%. And the Prophet, she said, do so, because he is your heaven and he is your hell. He is your heaven and he is your hell. I.e., he's your door to heaven and he's your road to hell. I.e., if you mess up, that's where you're going. The Prophet ﷺ did not say that to men. Did not say, the Prophet ﷺ said, be nice to women, be patient with women, don't expect them to do this. He did not tell a man, hey, your wife, that's heaven and hell for you, bro. It's not like that. There is a huge fundamental religious and emotional difference, right? And when men are men and women are women, everyone's happy. But when one of them is not, there's always this mismatch, and we have to start fixing it one place or another. And for any man, it's very difficult to start putting his foot down because um, there's no reception for that. But if you can be on the receiving end, it's much easier, right? When you become less bossy, more submissive, right? And more submissive specifically in the most difficult situations, which is what? Where you don't feel emotionally connected. You don't love that person at all at that moment at all. You don't, not in the least interest in being intimate with that person, right? And so, but that's called morality, right? That's called taklif. Taklif is doing that which is difficult. And through that, you change a lot of things. You change a lot of things, right? The Quran, reviewing the Quran is easy when it means pick it up from the floor. It's hard when it means apply it, right? It's very hard, right? So again, I am not trying to say that it's all on women's shoulders, but I am trying to say that some things can start with women, right? Because men on a back foot, particularly in the West, they're on a back foot where you can't actually do certain things. You can't actually, whatever you do is labeled, is viewed and enforced as toxic masculinity, which is not really the case. And it's better for men to do stupid mistakes than for women to be controlling them. It's much better. Let him fall on his face, let him get into debt. Let him, I don't know, whatever it is. He sends the kids to mother school. That's his responsibility. It's very important, but like, that's not my responsibility. That's his responsibility. I've advised him, let him fall. It's very important for a man to do that, even if he learns 15 years later. Inshallah, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad. Any immediate questions? Inshallah, we'll stop here. Wa sallallahu ala Sayyidina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi wa sallam.